Welcome everybody to the Dreambuildrs podcast. I am very looking forward to the upcoming conversation. This will be about how you can build your own path, keep doing what you're doing, and also about neuroscience. And I'm especially interested in that topic because this is something that we can all use in the current days. Now, I'm sitting down with a good friend of mine, Sylvia Jagla, and she is also a digital transformation consultant, a yoga meditation teacher, neuroscience ninja, and a female leadership development coach certified by the University of Oxford. And she is particularly passionate about helping ambitious remote professionals sustain high-performance lives using neuroscience and mindfulness holistically. Sylvia, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Honored to be here today with you.
I've been very much looking forward to this conversation as we just talked about it before we started this. But I would like to start off, first of all, like for all the other people who don't know, perhaps how we met, right? That was very, very cool. We met 2 years ago in Gran Canaria on, I would say, like a pretty adventurous mastermind. And it was a huge transformational experience, at least for me, and I think also for you. And what happened from there onwards is that, we stayed in touch and we made like good friendships. But what particularly happened for me and what was very nice is that I started organizing my first event for Dreambuildrs, roughly a month after, where I had this vision in my mind, like, okay, I want to bring together some amazing people, like purpose-driven people, have these meaningful conversations, do some networking, but also bring people on stage who have a very valuable message to share about personal development, about being purpose-driven, about what it is to be authentic and vulnerable. And then I always say to the people, like, okay, so how did you get the speakers together? And I was like, yeah, one person was crazy enough to fly in from Brazil and come speak in Porto that day, and that was Sylvia. So until this day, I'm still like, super grateful for the fact that you came, like, traveling all that way for a free event. So that was, pretty cool. And I think for you, it was also a nice way because you came in there with a, as how I saw it, with a mission. Because even though it was a free event and it was one of your first gigs, I remember, you came to share there for the first time, your raw and vulnerable story. And that really, lighted something up in me and also in the audience. And you did a very groundbreaking meditation practice afterwards with the people who were sitting in the room. And that was really, really cool. That was really phenomenal. Like that, I really like that. So I was like, wow, that was amazing. And, from that moment onwards, with that mission in mind to help other people like that, you've been, landing more and more speaking gigs around the world. So I really think that's amazing. And I really would like to thank you once again for doing that for yourself, but it also shows, your perseverance in life and your passion for what you're doing. So I would love to start off, first of all, this was a very long intro, to, with you and also with your backstory, because I think it's really powerful. So I would love to know more about your backstory, and please share that with my audience.
Thank you so much for sharing this kind of, the context around how the two of us met. And to be honest, the journey from Brazil to your speaking gig, just to share my point of view of that, is I will never forget. This was basically, like you said, I was sharing for the first time my own personal story. And I think we will come back to that a little bit later as well, when it comes to follow your path, to create your own path, to be who you are meant to be. And I had something that was holding me back deeply, and I was not even aware of that. So the realization of that and then going on the stage for you was basically my step of freeing myself, of showing that this is not something that can hold me back, and own my story, own my past, own my present, and own my future. So it was very, not only about going for the mission, but also allowing myself to step on a different journey, I believe, along this mission journey, to be honest. And yes, so I will just keep it a little bit briefer about my story, where I am from and what I'm doing. So I, at the age of 6.5, I became a half-orphan and moved with my dad to Germany from Poland. So being the weirdo, being the different one is basically part of my journey. So everybody who's resonating with that, when you're different kind of your whole life, this is basically who I am. This is part of my identity, if you wish. And at some point, it is okay to be different, and you start to embrace it. And this became part of me when I moved out at home at the age of 16, started my own journey, and started to realize what I want, what I don't want. And I was doing lots and lots of jobs to survive for a longer period of time. I was raising my brother for a longer period of time as well. And eventually, I made it to my dream job in a corporate world. So I studied a little bit later, finished, graduated, and started to work as an HR consultant, human resources consultant, and became very, very fast the human resources business partner, consulting the executive, and lots of great projects in front of me. Saying that, this was basically my kind of journey that I believed is the one that I want to have. It was not something that was provided to me, or, you know, we all know that maybe family expects you to do something, maybe your environment expects you to do something. I haven't had any kind of those things. It was basically my dream to help people. And this maybe sounds a little bit cliche, especially for human resources people, that you are going into human resources because you want to work with humans, right? So you want to help them. The reality of that looks a little bit different, to be quite frank, because of course the projects are not only there to develop people. I was working in people development department, in actually all of those departments except some of payroll stuff. And at the end of the day, I was just realizing that after a dear friend of mine got very sick and died within 1 year, that the only question that I had, would it be the same thing what I'm doing right now when I will know that I'm not here for a long period of time? And I could not say with certainty that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, that this is going to be the thing that I will be doing, even though I know that I might be not here within the next few months. And this kind of experience, and along seeing him so sick and leaving this planet physically, I just realized that there might be more, that there might be something different. So after having this whole socially accepted and finally not being the different anymore in certain ways, to be honest, but basically matching all the check boxes, right, for the society, you earn lots of money, you have the prestige, you have the position and all the stuff. And yet here I am, you know, like sitting is like, okay, I'm quitting, I'm heading to India, and it's like completely out of context, to be honest. Like everybody was like, why would you go to India? You've never been to India before. And it was just this, it was just this inner calling. This was, I cannot even explain. I was just feeling this is the way to go. And this is basically the beginning of a journey that I call my own personal path of kind of the supreme self, I think, if you wish.
Wow. I think that's a very daring step and courageous step to, you know, after working for corporate so long and then leave that environment, like kind of what you say, like you have a luxurious position and you kind of follow the society path, but then to follow your own passion. I think that is really, really cool. And I want to zoom in a little bit on that to understand, you know, how you felt when you made that step. I mean, you're working for corporate and you're thinking like, perhaps one day I would like to go to India and do my yoga teacher training, right? But how was it feeling when you decided really to do that? Like, okay, like now I'm going for it. I'm making that leap. I'm taking that step for myself, really to follow my own path.
To be honest, I didn't go from something that I don't like or that I don't want to do anymore. Like I'm still consulting corporates, I'm still doing the stuff that I have been doing back then. It was just the feeling that there might be more, there might be something else, something different. And what could be more different than India versus Germany, right? And to answer your question, how was the feeling? It was very, very risky. It was very shaky. I was having all those things that I believe are holding people right now, holding them back, or even providing lots of stress to them, such as fear, insecurity, and limitations. And I think you can count all of them into my decision making back then. It was basically just this inner gut feeling that I could not deny. I could not explain to anybody. It was just like, this is what I'm gonna do. That's it. Like, you don't have to explain yourself to anybody if you want to do something that might not make even sense to you. So you're just gonna own your decision, and this is what I've done. It was very challenging. It was, by the way, even challenging after being 3 months in India. Like, I came to India. India is a very big country. So I was in North India in the mountains, very nice, very beautiful, very cozy. So not so like you might be even experiencing or thinking about India in a common sense that it's crowded and loud and full. It was the opposite. It was really nice and really beautiful. I met amazing people very fast. I was doing my yoga teacher training there, so I was not even alone. But the thing was that it was so different, right? It was so different to what I know. And therefore my brain and my body and my mind would be constantly asking myself, like, what the heck are you doing here? Like, why would you throw away your whole career? You were working so hard for it. And this was basically my story over and over again. And on the other hand, I was waking up at 5 a.m., jumping on a yoga mat at 6 a.m., and having a very hard physical practice that I was not used to before as well. I was sitting in the office. So it was very challenging, even for the first quarter, to find the new normal. Like what we all have to do right now, by the way, right? We have to find ourselves within this new normal after a pandemic. You can call it how you want, maybe COVID-19, whatever you want to, how you want to look at it. But everybody had to kind of find a new normal within this environment, and exactly the same thing you can imagine back then, kind of.
Wow, I think you mentioned something very interesting. You said like you have to own your decision. That was what I really liked from your story, and that you then start building your own path. And that India was super different from your environment in corporate and also in Germany. And I would love to know what was your, let's say, your biggest learning experience, and especially your biggest lesson, like what you learned in that time in India right there.
I think I was just thinking about it yesterday and reading something, by the way, and this comes down to mindfulness as well, about being open-minded and non-judgmental always, and thinking out of the box and seeing, okay, there might be a different way than you know, and there is always a different way. It does not have to work for you. It does not have to be something what you like, but this is definitely something what we can consider and then see if we want to apply it or not.
Yes, and how did that work out for you? Because this is sometimes, you know, I understand people like listening because sometimes that's easier said than done, right? So how did that work out for you in that experience?
So it was not only in India, it was even last year in South America, where I was seeing people having ice cream for breakfast. And the first thing, when you're from Europe, you're probably like thinking, okay, like you're not even allowed to have sweets in the morning, right? Not to mention ice cream. And I was just sitting there, and there I was just, you can, and this is something so beautiful, you can change your mental maps, you can change your brain, you can change your body, you can change your mind, and you can change also your nervous system. And for me personally, how I realized it is basically when you see something that is not familiar to you. This can be anything. And then first of all, see what you think. Maybe some unconscious judgment will show up. For example, why would you eat some sugar in the morning, right? This is what we first think when we see someone eating ice cream for breakfast. And the second thing is, well, maybe they had their breakfast, their normal breakfast at 5 or 6 a.m. However, it's working for them. They are super happy people, as far as I could tell. I've seen them. And this is basically something what I think is very, very approachable for all of us. See what is coming up and then reframe it. Do I look at it from the right perspective? Do I see it in a correct way? Like, for example, right now I'm here in Tenerife, and Spain is very famous for their siestas because of the temperature. in Germany, you are not going to go for a nap, generally speaking, at 2 or 3 p.m. or something like that, because there is a different temperature.
Yeah.
It's, of course, a different culture as well. So even within Europe, we can look at those cultures and see that people are functioning in different countries in a different way. And maybe you, where you're sitting right now, the way how everything is functioning around you is not your perfect way. So just look around, see how people are doing it, and then discover your own unique way of doing things.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I think that matters a lot. And after you left India, you have basically been traveling the world remotely as a digital nomad, and you have been working with startups, corporations, and small businesses as well. Like a completely different lifestyle from what you're used to do. And I just would like to ask, like, how do you start building that lifestyle for yourself? How do you start believing in yourself that you're actually capable of being that independent? And making money, let's say, for yourself. I think that's also one of the struggles that many people have when they think about leaving corporate and doing something new, like becoming a freelancer or whatever. How do you start building that confidence within yourself?
That's such a great question. And it comes down to worthiness, I think, right? It's about being worthy to be independent, to not rely on someone else. And for me personally, and what I would recommend everybody else, is also to, first of all, and I call it the DARE method. It's basically something created based on neuroscience, on psychology, and something what I apply on a regular basis, because things are changing. Maybe you grow, maybe you lose, maybe you have new challenges, whatever is coming up. I always ask myself, D stands for discover. Really discover over and over again what is blocking you, what kind of fear is coming up, what kind of insecurity is coming up, what kind of limitation is coming up, and where is it coming from. You really discover over and over again, no matter what is coming, what is changing, because whenever you're changing, we can talk about the neuroscience of self-sabotage as well, but you will over and over see that things are changing, and therefore you might discover any kind of new triggers. Yeah. So you discover over and over again. Then you acknowledge it, because what we have a tendency to neglect, a tendency to find excuses, or a tendency to go into victimhood. Very, very familiar, that everybody in the world is basically the reason for why things are not working out. To acknowledge that this is your thing, what is happening with inside of you is only your responsibility, and acknowledge what is there. There is nothing bad. I would invite all of us nowadays to face ourselves with more grace and more passion. And more kindness towards ourselves, no matter what is coming up there, and allow ourselves to move on, not to hold on to old stories over and over again. So I didn't grow up in a very rich family. We've had what we needed, of course, but at some point I was even almost homeless at the age of 18. So I had a very long period of time where I was living month to month to month, and was struggling quite a lot to provide food and everything else for my brother and myself by myself. So I had, of course, lots of stuff on uncovering and unlayering within there. So you discover, you acknowledge, then you realign, meaning you can reprogram your brain. You can again create mental maps within you the way how you want. So this is basically something based super, and now I know maybe some of you don't want to hear it, but your brain, you can cheat your brain in the most amazing ways, and your brain will not differentiate between reality or not reality. Meaning, and whatever you are experiencing right now, maybe you see some triggers, take whatever resonates with you, leave whatever doesn't, but your brain does it anyway. You create your own reality on a daily basis. Of course, we have the unconscious mind that has been basically programmed throughout our year. We can reprogram this as well. So it's basically about realigning. So discover, acknowledge, realign, and then execute. So acting accordingly, meaning that you start to do even the hard things. And we were just talking before we started with you, Jochem, about creating our own hardships. So once you face them, and entrepreneurship is basically something that is for sure not for everybody, but you will face any kind of challenges, rejections, anything that you have to deal with, you have to pitch yourself, etc. So create your own hardships in a way, and this is what I would recommend everybody, so you are then stronger in any kind of situation that is basically forcing you to be strong.
Wow. I think this is a very beautiful method, the DARE method. I think the first three can be, let's say they are like nice theoretical concept that you can, let's say, more easily implement from my perspective. And I think the last step, the execute one, is by far the most, let's say, not complicated, but the most daring. Like, how do you start executing on a daily basis to live out what you truly want? Because that is where we go from, let's say, thinking, like remapping our brains, and this is all great. But how do you go to that action state of doing and really becoming what you want to be?
I think this is another great question, to be honest, because we all have it, that we have maybe for a certain time a driven and disciplined way of doing things, but eventually we will drop out, right? So what I recommend everybody to do is to start with micro changes, micro adjustments, micro habits. Meaning that when you want to start, for example, have a morning routine, don't start with a meditation, with yoga, cold showers, and journaling, because I promise you within maybe 1 week or even earlier, we would all drop out of that, because it's just too much. It's too complicated for most of us, at least, especially when you have a lot on your table. So what I invite everybody to do, to start with a micro habit, really make it absolutely easy. And the first thing what you want to start is to look at a trigger for your habit. For example, leave your journal and a pen on the table. For me now, if I want to go into the sea, I have to leave my bikini outside. So I see the bikini, I jump. It's basically the trigger. Then you have to look at whatever you want to do is basically the reward of your own doing, right? You do it, and then you have any kind of reward within this whole habit. Micro habit, once again, you focus on the smallest thing that you can do on a daily basis. And then you see and look at the repetitions. For some people, it works that you have to schedule it maybe in your calendar. For me personally, it is, I imagine it in the evening before. So I start to prime my brain. This is called priming. So there are different methods, either scheduling, priming yourself for it, visualization, like I did back then in Portugal, visualize yourself doing this.
Yes.
And your brain will basically start to prime, and you wake up and you will just almost automatically start doing it. And this is what we want to get, because on a daily basis, we all operate up to 95% on automated basis, right? So absolutely everything what we are doing. And this is so funny when I start to catch myself like, oh my, this is the habit. We know this is the habit, what we don't want to have, Sylvia. So this is what I do with myself as well, over and over again. And this is basically the cycle. Have your trigger, have your reward after you've done it. So your brain starts to create dopamine, and this is basically something that you will then appreciate and do, and start to repeat it on a regular basis. Whatever this means to you, you can do it on a weekly basis, you can do it on a daily basis, maybe on a monthly basis, depending on what it is.
Can we quickly dive, because I like this process, can we quickly dive into the reward part of what you just explained? So you mentioned triggers, and then you do something, which is great, and then you reward yourself. But what kind of rewards, can you give examples of that? Like, imagine you want to make a very big change, like quitting your job or starting a new yoga practice or doing anything big like that, right? I mean, how are you going to reward yourself on that daily basis, like taking small steps?
Depending on what you like. for example, for me personally, my reward is I have my warm coffee here in front of me. By the way, decaffeine coffee. Recently, by accident, traveling to Tenerife and then getting a coffee that was not a real coffee, but it tastes like a coffee. So started having less caffeine right now by accident. What was, by the way, my plan. So the universe meant it well with me. No, I'm just a side note. To answer your question is, how do you create your reward? It really depends. Like when you're traveling, you might have certain challenges, and when you're at home and you're familiar with your environment, what do you like? For me personally, is to have my warm coffee after getting out of this cold sea or cold shower or whatever. I take a cold shower every single morning. So no matter if where I am, I'm taking my cold shower every single morning, and afterwards I like to have this warmness, and this is my own personal reward. It is super simple and super easy, right? When you want to take a bigger change, for example, starting a yoga practice and implementing this and doing it for a longer period of time, inviting you to maybe start only with 10 minutes per day, or maybe with 20 minutes every second day. Really make it doable for you so you can keep up the reward, and you will not be demotivated after a very short period of time. And if you are doing something bigger, then think about a bigger treatment for you. Maybe it is a weekend. I mean, right now it's probably challenging. Maybe it is a weekend for yourself, with yourself. This would be for me. I do this on a regular basis. I book for myself either a great hotel or a great Airbnb. I am there for a whole weekend by myself, and I just, have my mask, some treatment. I walk around the city. And do a soul stroll, and it really depends what you like, and make it doable for you. And depending on when I have my business targets, I hit them, I for sure get something that is basically making me happy, in a sense that I can appreciate it. And when you do the bigger things, make sure that the reward is bigger as well. And I also consult, for example, when we talk in human resources, when you want to raise someone's salary, if you do it in a very exactly the opposite how you basically set a habit, right? When you do it very gradually, almost not you don't feel it almost, then the reward is not such a great thing for you, right? So if you want to make a bigger difference in your overall being, make sure that the reward is bigger. Maybe it's a short trip, depending on really what you like, but make it for you, and maybe schedule, buy it already or create it already, set it up there, and make sure that you see it. So it will be always in your mind, and you will look forward to it, and therefore stick to it even better.
Yes, thank you. Okay, that was a very practical example. Thanks for that. Now, what I think, like most of us, we make decisions from our brain, but we also like to make decisions from our, let's say, from our heart or from our intuition. Like you said, you wanted to do the yoga practice in India, and it was a decision based from your heart or from your intuition. And these kind of decisions are often most surprising to us, right? I would like to see your take on that. Like, how can we start making these decisions more from our, let's say, from our gut or from our instinct, and sometimes do not listen too much to what our brain has to tell us?
This is a little bit of a, I would say, journey with ourselves that we can go. It depends if you are right or left brainer. So left brainer, very logic, very fact-oriented person, or if you're right brainer, more close to your emotions, creative, etc. Anyway, both of those brainers can do it. What we want to become is a whole brainer. And when we are coming to our intuition, to our gut feeling, this is something that is depending on who you are, created in different areas. For some of us, it's in the heart, around the heart area. For me personally, it's my stomach. My stomach responds before my brain can even start to think, to be honest. Like, this is my own kind of gut feeling, like very, very straightforward.
Yeah.
And when you have to make, for example, a decision where you want to go to and what to do next, and this might be something challenging for you, tell someone to ask the question, tell someone or ask yourself this kind of question. And when you feel this almost instant contraction within your body, it's like, you know, when someone is kind of punching you in your stomach a little bit, and or even just shows you that they want to punch you in the stomach, and you have kind of this small, kind of almost instinct reaction towards this to move forward, then I think you start to feel and see your kind of intuition, your gut feeling in itself. And when you are open and when you really start to, give it to me, kind of this sense of feeling, then you're more likely to go with the right decision. For me personally, it was a journey to start to listen to it, because this is nothing that is kind of taught at school or anywhere else, right? So this is something what I had to learn, and within the period of time. And even now, my partner, my fiance, is always asking me, so what would you do? What is your gut feeling telling you? And it's almost kind of like, you could say, for everybody who loves data, and I love data as well, by the way, I'm a data and a gut driven person. It's something that you can rely on, because, and this, I don't want this to sound any woohoo, but there are still cultures, they are working on an unconscious level, but we have such a distracted and interrupted way of living on a daily basis that we have challenges to work with ourselves, to listen to ourselves, not to mention to really connect with this kind of deeper feeling within ourselves. And we all have it. And this is something what you can learn throughout the journey, and test it with small things. Like I do it, for example, with parking spaces. Test your gut feeling and think, okay, no, I think I could go in that direction or in that direction. Just follow it and go with it and see how it works for you. And when it comes to bigger decisions, make sure, for some people it is a pro and con list, right? And then at the end you still have to decide. So really start to apply this and train it. It's just like a muscle. The more you train it, the more you will be able to use it in a very conscious, trustworthy, and absolutely aligned way of doing things.
All right. Thank you. Sounds very good. And I invite everybody to train that muscle, because it's super, super important. Now, I know that you're helping a lot of professionals to sustain, you know, their high performance. And I think that is super critical right now in this, what you just said, like in this time of period, like we are now even spending more time at home than we used to do. So what is, let's say, the biggest recommendation from your side to have these high performance lives, to keep on sustaining that? Because I think it's so critical, especially right now. What's your take on
that? First of all, I would invite everybody, like the biggest thing is to define your own mindfulness, to define your own personal leadership, to define your own personal freedom. Because we are so buzzed and bombarded with information and inspiration around the world, and that's perfectly great, and it's awesome, like podcasts, etc., to get some inspiration and to hear different ways of doing things different way. Like I just said at the beginning, right? You're in a different country, people are doing things in a different way. Get it, but take a time for yourself where you unplug from the entire world. Take your phone away and start to define what it means to you. What does it mean to you to, for example, have a good working routine at home? When you work from home or when you travel, how does it look for you? for me personally, I have to keep my routine as good as possible. For me personally, it means I need to have my sleep. There are people like my fiance, he's operating without sleep perfectly well. If I don't sleep, I cannot function so well. When you're maybe on an adventure somewhere in the outback, that's okay, like for a limited period of time. I can function on a very low hours of sleep. And Jochem, you probably can just sing a song about that after becoming just a father, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So you have to know this about yourself. You have to know yourself, and you have to know yourself beyond this kind of identity that I would call the given identity. And there's nothing wrong about that. And for me, like after growing up without my mother, I didn't have a big kind of role model when it comes to women. And I see it today as a blessing, because I am not automatically responsible for all those things that women are responsible. Like, I just don't see it because I grew up with two men, right? So how can I say there's not this kind of feeling at all, because I've never kind of had it for a longer period of time around me. So really go into yourself, unplug from everything, create your own day. How does your own day should look like in a great way? Maybe you take a half an hour just doing nothing, or maybe an hour and drink your coffee without your phone. We have the habits of being distracted and interrupted on an ongoing basis. And mindfulness for me personally, and the biggest thing is, and it comes again to being present, to be open-minded and non-judgmental. And this is such a great challenge, because we worry about things that might or might not happen tomorrow on an ongoing basis. Then we maybe judge what we've done yesterday. And I have it on a regular basis as well. And it's something that pops up. And the only thing that you want to do is not to grab your thought, not to continue thinking it, just to witness it and understand and, yeah, gotcha. And I move on. Does it make sense? It's basically when it's out of nowhere, this kind of thought will pop up. I just take it, see it, witness it, and move on.
Great. I would like to understand a little bit better, like, why the journey that you're walking right now. I think it's very, very brave, courageous, and also beautiful. You're helping so many people and companies and corporations to have these more, high performance lives and so on, and to facilitate digital transformations. You are doing great work. Why is that so important to you?
Well, let me think about this. Why is it? Because the interesting thing is, it's not so important for everybody, right? Because some people just like to do their thing, then close their laptop, and that's it. For me, it's kind of heart driven. I just love doing it. I think, to be honest, I think it just comes down because the way how I grew up, right? Big part of my life has been to take care of someone for a longer period of time. And now you're dead, you know what I'm talking about, to not in such an extensive way like you do it for a baby, but for my brother for a very, very long time. And there I seen within him and some other people that there is so much greatness within them, so much life, and so much great, awesomeness within each and every single one of us. However, we might don't know how our brain functions, how our mind functions, how our body functions. We don't know what we need. We don't try it out. And it's very easy to fall down this kind of trap of almost dying while being alive. And I think this was the biggest thing for me a few years ago, even before a friend of mine got so sick and then unfortunately left this planet, was that I was seeing people in Bali. Back then it was in Bali, and I was like, oh my God, their eyes are like sparkling. What the heck is here? What is going on here? Do they have any kind of substances that they take or whatever? Like, it's just kidding.
I see.
Just kidding. It's just basically the thought about the curiosity that I've always had naturally became louder and louder, and helping. And my mom was also, by the way, nurse. So I think this is something what is part of my intrinsic self, to be of service for others and help others in a great way, hopefully in many ways. And I think this is basically the pure, on the other side, the pure selfish joy for me to see someone glow. No, really, like I had a coaching call last week with a woman, and it was like, it just gives me life as well. I don't know how to say it. It's almost like a very, very rewarding work for me personally as well. So on one side, it is about, it's hard for me to see when people are not kind of reaching their highest potential. And on the other side, it is for me a very nourishing way of working with someone when they start to rise, into their own power, own their decision, own their life, and start doing things, even in a daily way. You don't have to leave the whole continent or anything like that. It's just on a daily basis. I think those two aspects are why I love this work, what I'm doing.
Thank you. Now, I think you mentioned something interesting, and I would like to wrap up with that question. And we talked about it already a little bit. Is like, okay, many of us are living a certain amount of potential, but we know that there is much more in us sometimes, right? How can we just start acting on it, executing on it? We've been talking about it already, but how can you go, let's say, from you kind of know what your purpose is, you found your purpose already, but how can you do it on a daily basis? How can you start living it?
For me, well, I would suggest everybody who is listening, maybe like for me, when I was in India, I knew my purpose was I wanted to teach at the beach. I was doing it, and then realized that this is too much of this kind of world for me. So I had to shift. So allowing yourself, first of all, to readjust always. So there is not only one highway. And this is how you can start to also reach your highest potential over and over again. For me personally, this kind of change ignites more energy within me. But when you want to do it on a daily basis, I would suggest to create your own challenges and hardships on a regular basis, so you can start to see your power. You can start to see that you're stronger than you thought you are. I just mentioned before our call that I started with ice bathing, 0 degrees water with like ice cubes in Berlin in October. Believe me, this is going on your stage in Portugal.
Definitely.
Everything beyond my wildest dreams before I've done it, to be honest, really beyond. I was becoming a diver. I was having nightmares for 1 week. So really create, what is this kind of fear, this insecurity and limitation within you, define it, and then create one kind of challenge or hardship for yourself to show yourself that you can go beyond it. And I think this is what I would recommend everybody to do on a regular basis. Yes.
Thank you, Sylvia. I think we're going to round up with that because that's a very powerful message. I would like to thank you for your time, for your energy, for all the insights that you brought into this conversation. And also, I would like to see if you, like, where people can find you. Please, if you have like a link to share or so, I'll drop it in the comments, but please feel free to tell where people can find you.
You can find me on all the social media, on Instagram at The Wonder Woman Way, on LinkedIn, of course, as Sylvia Jagla, on Facebook as Sylvia Jagla as well. So wherever you put my name, you will probably find me very fast. Looking forward to connect with you. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Awesome. Follow Sylvia Jagla, please do it. And I want to thank you once again, Sylvia. And also for all the listeners, I want to thank you for listening, and I hope to see you back soon. Cheers.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Cheers. Bye-bye.